The data made no sense, and Dr. Rilla-san had checked it 14 times. She stood in her laboratory aboard the Galactic Institute's orbital research station, her translucent blue skin flickering with the soft bioluminescence that marked confusion in her species. The Palori were known throughout the galaxy as the finest geneticists, capable of reading DNA like others read simple text. But human DNA refused to be read simply. "Tessic," she called to her junior researcher, "come look at this." The Morevi shuffled over on his 6 legs, his compound eyes scanning the floating holographic display. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "Junk DNA, or what should be junk DNA." Rilla pointed at the glowing strands. "In every other species we have studied, evolutionary leftovers become inactive within a few thousand generations. The body stops maintaining code it does not need." "That is basic biology," Tessic agreed. "Then explain why humans still maintain active genetic sequences for detecting predators that went extinct 60,000 years ago." Tessic was quiet for a long moment. "That cannot be correct. I have verified it 14 times. Their genes still code for hormonal responses to threats that no longer exist on their world. Their bodies still prepare them to hunt animals they have never seen and flee from predators that exist only in fossils." The door to the laboratory slid open, and a human male walked in. He was average height for his species, with brown skin a few shades darker than earth soil and short black hair. His name was Dr. Fenwick Hale, and he served as the human liaison for the research project. "You requested me?" he asked pleasantly. Rilla studied him. He looked so ordinary, so calm. Nothing about his appearance suggested the genetic chaos hidden in his cells. "Yes, Dr. Hale. We have encountered something unusual in our research, and we require your assistance." "Happy to help. What do you need?" "We need to understand why your species refuses to forget." Hale blinked. "I am not sure I follow." Rilla gestured to the holographic display, and the human genome expanded to fill the space between them. "Your DNA contains active sequences that serve no purpose in your modern world. Genes that prepare your body for environments and threats you have not faced in thousands of generations. Your species should have shed this unnecessary code long ago, yet you maintain it as though your lives depend on it." "Maybe they do," Hale said quietly. "Explain." The human shrugged. "We call it instinct, gut feelings, the little voice that tells you not to walk down a dark alley or to check the backseat of your car before you get in. But these are irrational fears based on nothing." "Are they?" Hale smiled, but there was something old in his eyes. "My grandmother used to tell me that our blood remembers what our minds forget. I always thought she was being poetic." Rilla exchanged a glance with Tessic. "We would like to conduct some tests, simple simulations to measure your physiological responses to various stimuli." "Sure, what kind of stimuli?" "Environmental scenarios, darkness, heights, open spaces, nothing dangerous." Hale nodded agreeably and followed them to the simulation chamber. The room was spherical, capable of projecting any environment with perfect clarity. Rilla had used it hundreds of times to study stress responses in various species. "Please stand in the center," she instructed. Hale complied. Rilla began the first simulation, complete darkness. His heart rate increased slightly but remained within normal parameters. The second simulation showed a cliff edge. Again, mild elevation in stress hormones, but nothing remarkable. "Interesting," Rilla murmured, recording the data. "Your responses are within expected ranges." "I told you I am pretty boring." "One more test." Rilla selected a simulation she had designed based on the dormant genetic sequences she had discovered. The chamber transformed into an open grassland under a twilight sky. Wind moved through the tall grass, creating waves of motion across the plain. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a patch of grass to Hale's left rustled against the wind. The change was immediate and shocking. Hale's entire body went rigid. His pupils dilated until his eyes were nearly black. His heart rate doubled, and his adrenal glands flooded his system with enough hormones to lift a ground vehicle. He was not looking at the rustling grass with fear. He was looking at it like a hunter. "End simulation," Rilla commanded. The grassland vanished, replaced by the neutral white of the chamber. Hale blinked several times, seeming to come back to himself. "What was that?" he asked, his voice slightly shaken. "That is what we are trying to understand." Rilla's skin was flickering rapidly now, a display of excitement she could not control. "Your body recognized a threat pattern from a simulation of conditions that existed on your planet over 50,000 years ago. You have never experienced this situation, Dr. Hale. Your parents have not. Your grandparents have not. No one in your family line for thousands of generations has faced a predator in tall grass, yet your genes still remember." Hale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My grandmother was right." Rilla stepped closer to the human, studying him with new eyes. "Dr. Hale, I have analyzed the genomes of over 400 species. Not one of them maintains genetic memory beyond a few hundred generations at most. Your species has carried this code for longer than most civilizations have existed. The question is not simply academic. I need to understand why." "Why what?" "Why humans still remember the hunt." Hale met her eyes, and for a moment, Rilla saw something ancient looking back at her. Something that had watched predators stalk through grass and had learned to stalk them in return. "Because we have never stopped hunting," he said. "We just found different things to chase." The words hung in the air, and Rilla felt something she had not experienced in decades of research. She felt like prey. 3 weeks after the first simulation, Rilla had not slept properly. The Palori required only minimal rest, a few hours every few days, but even that had escaped her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the transformation in Hale's face, the way his pupils had expanded, the shift in his posture from a mild-mannered scientist to something primal and dangerous. "You are obsessing," Tessic observed as he entered the lab. "I am researching," Rilla corrected. "There is a difference. You have run the same genetic sequence analysis 47 times. Because the results should not be possible." Rilla pulled up a comparative display. "Look at this. The Dranaki evolved on a harsh world with multiple apex predators. Within 2,000 generations of developing technology, they shed 90% of their survival response genes. The Moravi were prey animals for millions of years before achieving sentience. Your species eliminated those genetic markers within 500 generations of building your first cities." "It was inefficient code," Tessic said. "We no longer needed it." "Exactly. Every species we have ever studied has done the same thing, once the threat is gone, the genes fall silent. But humans?" Rilla gestured at the holographic strand of human DNA floating before her. "Humans have been the dominant species on their planet for 10,000 years. Nothing has hunted them in countless generations. Yet they maintain every single survival response as though they expect a predator to leap from the shadows at any moment." The door opened, and Hale walked in. He had agreed to serve as their primary research subject after the simulation incident, though Rilla suspected he was as curious about the findings as she was. "Good morning," he said. "What is today's test?" "Today we talk," Rilla said. "I need to understand what you experience, what you feel when these genetic responses activate." Hale settled into a chair designed for species twice his size. "I have been thinking about that since last time, the grass simulation. And I did not feel afraid. I should have been afraid. There was something in the grass, something watching me, and my logical mind knew it was just a simulation. But my body did not care about logic. My body knew exactly what to do." "Which was?" "Become the bigger threat." Hale's eyes grew distant. "It is hard to explain. One moment I was myself, Fenwick Hale, scientist and researcher. The next moment I was something older, something that knew the weight of a spear in its hand and the taste of blood on its tongue. I have never thrown a spear in my life, Dr. Son, but in that moment I remembered how." Tessic made a sound of disbelief. That is not how genetics work. DNA codes for proteins, not memories. Perhaps not in your species, Rilla said quietly. She had been building a theory, and Hale's words confirmed it. Humans may be different. Their neural architecture is uniquely suited for pattern recognition and memory storage. What if their DNA does not store memories directly, but rather stores the triggers for certain neural configurations, ancient neural pathways that activate under specific conditions? Echo memories, Hale said. Both aliens looked at him. It is an old human idea, the theory that trauma and survival experiences can be passed down through generations. Scientists on my world have studied it for decades. We know that children of trauma survivors show different stress responses than the general population. We know that fears can be inherited. My people just never understood the mechanism. Rilla began pacing, her long limbs carrying her back and forth across the lab. This explains so much. Your species' irrational fears. Why human children are afraid of the dark when no predator has threatened them in that darkness. Why they check under their beds and inside closets for monsters that exist only in stories. Because they are not stories, Hale said. Not really. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors slept in caves while things with sharp teeth waited outside. The children who were not afraid of the dark did not survive to have children of their own. So the fear got passed down and passed down again until every human child is born knowing that something might be waiting in the shadows. But that should fade over time. It does in every other species. Hale shook his head. We do not let it fade. Our culture reinforces it. We tell stories about monsters. We make entertainment about predators and survival. Every generation we remind ourselves what we came from. Why? Because deep down, I think we know we might need it again. Silence filled the laboratory. Rilla stopped pacing and stared at the human. He looked so normal sitting there. Soft skin, no claws, no protective shell. By all measures, humans should have been prey animals, yet they had conquered their world with a ferocity that still puzzled galactic historians. I dream sometimes, Hale continued. Dreams that feel like memories, running through forests I have never seen, hunting animals I cannot name. I wake up exhausted like I have been sprinting all night. My grandfather said he had the same dreams, his grandfather too. The same dreams across generations. The same feelings, at least. The same sense of being watched, being hunted, being the one who hunts back. A soft chime interrupted them. Tessik's console was flashing with an urgent alert. What is it? Rilla asked. Tessik's compound eyes widened as he read the notification. There has been a containment breach in the xenobiology wing. A Silrath has escaped. Rilla felt her blood run cold. The Silrath were apex predators from a death world, pure killing machines that hunted in packs and tracked prey through thermal signatures. Even one could slaughter dozens before being stopped. She turned to warn Hale, to tell him they needed to reach a secure area immediately. But the man in the chair was not the same man who had walked in. Hale was on his feet, his posture completely different. His shoulders were square, his weight balanced on the balls of his feet. His eyes were scanning the room, checking exits and potential hiding spots. His breathing had slowed to something steady and controlled. Where is the xenobiology wing? He asked, and his voice had changed too, calmer, colder. Dr. Hale, we need to evacuate. Where is it? Rilla told him, and she watched as Dr. Fenwick Hale, mild-mannered human scientist, walked out of the laboratory with the stride of something that had been hunting since before his species had names for fear. The echo memories had awakened, and they remembered exactly what to do. Rilla made a decision that violated every safety protocol she had ever learned. She followed him. The station's corridors had gone dark, emergency power casting everything in dim red light. Somewhere in the distance, alarms were wailing, but the sound seemed muted, unimportant. All of Rilla's attention was focused on the human moving through the shadows ahead of her. She had brought her portable scanner, telling herself this was for research purposes. Whatever was happening to Hale's genetic markers needed to be documented. Future scientists would thank her. The Galactic Institute would award her grants. These were lies, and she knew it. The truth was simpler. She was watching something that should not exist, and she could not look away. Hale moved differently now. Back in the lab, he had walked like any other bipedal species, upright and somewhat clumsy. Now he flowed through the corridors like water through a canyon. He stayed close to the walls, never crossing open spaces without pausing first. His head turned constantly, tracking sounds and movements that Rilla could not detect. Her scanner beeped softly, and she checked the readings. His stress hormones were elevated, but not to the levels she would expect. Where most species would be flooded with cortisol and frozen by fear, Hale's body was releasing a carefully balanced mixture of adrenaline and dopamine. His heart rate was elevated but steady. He was not afraid. He was excited. "Dr. San," a voice crackled in her earpiece. It was Tessic, still in the lab. "I am monitoring his vitals from here. You need to see this." "I can see plenty," she whispered back. "No, you need to understand. The dormant genetic sequences we have been studying, they are no longer dormant. Every single one of them is active. His body has activated genes that most humans never access in their entire lives." Ahead of her, Hale had stopped. He stood perfectly still at an intersection of corridors, his head tilted slightly, listening. "What is he doing?" Tessic asked. "Hunting." The word came out before Rilla could stop it, but she knew it was true. She had studied predators across 100 worlds. She recognized the stance, the stillness, the absolute focus. Hale was hunting something that by all rights should have been hunting him. He moved again, turning down the left corridor with confidence. Rilla followed at a distance, her scanner recording everything. The station's intercom crackled. "Attention all personnel. Containment breach in xenobiology. A Silrath specimen has escaped. All personnel must proceed to secure areas immediately. Security forces are en route but will not arrive for 6 hours. Repeat, shelter in place for 6 hours." 6 hours? The Silrath could kill everyone on the station in 6 hours. Hale did not seem concerned about the announcement. He continued forward, pausing occasionally to check air vents and access panels. At one point, he pressed his palm flat against the floor and held it there for several seconds. "What is he doing now?" Tessic asked. "I think he is feeling for vibrations, movement through the floor. Humans cannot sense vibrations like that. Their sensory organs are too limited. Maybe they just forgot they could." Hale rose and continued forward, moving faster now. He was getting close to something. Rilla hurried to keep up. They entered a large cargo bay, filled with crates and storage containers. The lighting was worse here, barely functional, perfect ambush territory. Rilla wanted to call out, to warn Hale to be careful, but something told her to stay silent. Something told her that making noise right now would be very, very dangerous. Hale stood in the center of the cargo bay. He was not looking for the Silrath anymore. He was waiting for it. A shadow moved behind a stack of crates. Rilla saw it a moment before Hale reacted. Her skin flickered with alarm, bioluminescence betraying her fear. The Silrath emerged from hiding. It was 3 meters long, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. 6 legs carried a body built for killing, and its head was dominated by thermal pits that could track prey by body heat alone. Its mouth was a nightmare of curved teeth. It should have attacked immediately. The Silrath were not known for hesitation. But it did not attack. It circled, and Hale circled with it. "His body heat," Tessic said in her ear. "He has lowered it. He is controlling his blood flow to reduce his thermal signature. I did not know humans could do that." Neither did Rilla, but she watched as Hale matched the predator's movements, never showing his back, never breaking eye contact with those terrible thermal pits. Then Hale did something impossible. He growled. The sound that came from his throat was not human. It was deep and resonant, a warning that seemed to vibrate in Rilla's chest. It was the sound of a predator establishing territory, a declaration of dominance. The Silrath stopped circling. Hale took a step forward, then another. Each step was deliberate, purposeful. He was making himself larger, spreading his arms slightly, claiming space. Another growl, lower this time, more threatening. The Silrath, apex predator of a death world, took a step backward. "I do not understand," Tessic whispered. "How does he know to do this? The Silrath are not from his planet. His species has never encountered them." But Rilla was beginning to understand. Hale did not know the Silrath specifically. He did not need to. His genes remembered predators, thousands of them across millions of years of evolution. The specific shape did not matter. What mattered was the body language, the posture, the universal signs of threat and dominance that every predator understood. Hale's ancestors had faced lions and tigers and bears and wolves. They had learned to read every predator they encountered. They had learned which ones could be scared off and which ones had to be killed. They had learned how to make themselves the bigger threat. And now, across countless generations, that knowledge lived in Hale's blood. He took another step forward. The Silrath lowered its head in submission. Rilla watched in amazement as Dr. Fenwick Hale, human scientist, began walking toward the most dangerous creature on the station. And the creature followed him like a pet following its master. The hunt was over. But Rilla was beginning to realize that the hunt had never really stopped. For humans, it never did. The walk back to containment took 20 minutes. Rilla followed at a safe distance, her scanner working overtime to record every moment. Ahead of her, Hale walked through the darkened corridors with the Silrath padding along beside him like some terrible, obedient pet. "This defies everything we know about xenobiology," Tessic said through the comm. "The Silrath do not form social bonds. They do not recognize dominance outside their own species. They do not follow." "And yet," Rilla murmured, "it follows." The creature stayed close to Hale's side, its massive head nearly touching his hip. Occasionally it would make a low, rumbling sound, and Hale would respond with a sound of his own. Not words, something older than words. Station Commander Orvis was waiting outside the containment area. The Dranaki was short and wide, his species built for burrowing rather than fighting. His entire body was trembling with either fear or rage, possibly both. "You violated direct orders," Orvis snapped as Hale approached. "Every protocol states that we shelter in place during a containment breach. Security forces are trained for this. You are not." Hale did not respond. He walked past the commander and guided the Silrath through the open containment door. The creature went willingly, settling into the reinforced space without protest. Only when the door sealed behind it did Hale seem to come back to himself. He blinked several times. His posture softened. The ancient thing behind his eyes retreated, leaving behind the mild-mannered scientist Rilla had first met. "Sorry," he said. "What were you saying?" Orvis sputtered. "How did you do that? How did you control that creature?" "I did not control it. I just understood it." "That makes no sense." Hale rubbed his face, looking suddenly exhausted. "No, I suppose it does not." Rilla stepped forward, placing herself between the commander and her research subject. "I believe I can explain, but not here. Dr. Hale needs rest, and I need to analyze the data we collected." 4 hours later, they gathered in the main conference room. Orvis was there, along with Tessic and several other senior researchers. Hale sat at the end of the table, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. Rilla activated the holographic display, showing the genetic data she had recorded during the incident. "What we witnessed today was not some unique ability of Dr. Hale," she began. "It was the activation of genetic memory that exists in every human being, memory that stretches back to the earliest days of their species." "Genetic memory is a myth," one of the researchers protested. "For most species, yes, but humans are not most species." Rilla highlighted several gene sequences. Their DNA contains active code for behaviors and responses that should have been eliminated thousands of generations ago. Instead, humans maintain this code as though it were essential to survival. But why? Orvis demanded. What purpose does it serve to remember threats that no longer exist? Hale spoke up, because we learned that threats always come back. Everyone turned to look at him. My ancestors did not just survive predators, they studied them. They watched how wolves hunted in packs and copied their strategies. They observed how big cats waited in ambush and developed their own ambush techniques. They noted how prey animals read the land for danger and learned to read it themselves. He paused. Every predator we faced, we eventually became. Every prey animal we hunted, we learned to think like. We absorbed everything. That still does not explain how you communicated with the Silrath, Tessic said. Because predators speak a universal language, body posture, eye contact, the way you carry your weight, whether you show your teeth in threat or submission. The Silrath has never seen a human before, but it recognized me as a predator because predators always recognize each other. Rilla nodded. The data supports this. During the encounter, Dr. Hale's brain was accessing neural pathways that modern humans rarely use. Pathways that were developed when his species was still struggling to survive on a hostile world. His body remembered how to communicate with predators because his ancestors spent millions of years learning exactly that. So humans are predators, Orvis said slowly. No, Hale shook his head. We were prey too. For a very long time we were the hunted, not the hunters. Small, weak, no claws or fangs or protective shells. Everything on our planet wanted to eat us. Then how did you survive? By remembering everything, every attack, every close call, every trick that worked and every strategy that failed. We passed it all down, not just through stories and teaching, but through our blood. Our genes carry the wisdom of 10,000 generations of survivors. Rilla displayed a new sequence. This is what makes humans unique. Other species shed their survival coding once they become dominant. It is inefficient to maintain genetic responses for threats that no longer exist. But humans never stopped maintaining this code because they never stopped expecting the next threat. You think something else will try to hunt you? Tessic asked. Hale smiled, and for a moment that ancient predator looked out through his eyes again. Something always does, and when it comes, we will remember what to do. We always have. The room was silent. Then Orvis spoke, his voice quiet. The Silrath, why did it follow you? Why did it submit? Because I showed it what I was, not what I look like now with my soft skin and my civilized clothes, what I am underneath all that, what my ancestors made me. Hale stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. On my world there is a saying, it takes a monster to know a monster. The Silrath recognized what lived inside me, the same thing that lives inside every human, sleeping just beneath the surface, waiting to wake up. And what is that? Hale turned back to face them, and in the dim light of the conference room, something in his eyes seemed very old. The hunt, he said simply. We are the hunt, we always have been. Outside, the Silrath in its containment cell lifted its head and turned toward the conference room, as if it could sense the predator speaking within. It made no sound, but something in its posture looked almost like respect. Hale collapsed without warning. One moment he was standing at the window, the ancient predator still looking out through his eyes. The next moment he was on the floor, unconscious, his body crashing from the massive hormonal surge that had kept him alert and dangerous for hours. Rilla was the first to reach him. She checked his vital signs and felt a mix of relief and concern. He was alive, but his system was completely drained. The genetic activation that had let him face down an apex predator had come at a cost. They moved him to the medical bay. He did not wake for 2 days. During that time, Rilla barely left his side. She monitored his vitals, recorded his brain activity, and tried to understand what she had witnessed. Tessic brought her food that she forgot to eat and reminded her to rest in ways she ignored. His neural activity is unusual, Tessic observed on the second day. See these patterns? They match recordings we have of humans in deep sleep in something they call REM state, but the intensity is far beyond normal parameters. He is dreaming. Yes, but these are not ordinary dreams. The brain regions activated are associated with memory, specifically ancestral memory. It is as if his mind is processing information from sources outside his own lived experience. Rilla leaned closer to the displays. He is dreaming of lives he never lived. That should be impossible. Many things about humans should be impossible. On the third day, a ship arrived carrying a specialist. Dr. Yenna Moss was a human psychologist who had studied genetic memory for 30 years. She was old by human standards, her hair white and her movements slow, but her eyes were sharp and knowing. "I came as soon as I received your report," she said, reviewing Hale's data. "This is exactly what I have spent my career researching." "Then you can explain it," Rilla asked. "I can try." Moss pulled up a chair beside Hale's bed. "What you witnessed with Dr. Hale was not unique. Every human carries this potential. We have known about it for generations, though we have worked hard to keep that knowledge contained." "Why hide it?" Moss was quiet for a moment. "Because humans who fully access their genetic memories often struggle to come back. The weight of 10,000 generations is not easy to carry. Some of them never quite feel at home in the modern world again." "You speak from experience." "My grandmother fought in one of our great wars. She survived things that should have killed her over and over. Afterward, she would tell me that she could not take credit for her survival. She said her ancestors kept her alive, that she could feel them inside her, guiding her hands, making decisions faster than her conscious mind could process." Moss touched Hale's arm gently. "I did not believe her until I started studying the science." "What did the science show you?" "That humans are not individuals, not really. We are the accumulated wisdom of every ancestor who survived long enough to reproduce. Their victories live in us. Their traumas too. Every fear, every hard-won lesson, every instinct that kept them alive long enough to have children of their own. It is all there, written in our genes, waiting to be activated." Tessick made a sound of disbelief. "That sounds more like religion than science." "The line between them is thinner than you might think," Moss smiled sadly. "We have documented cases of humans speaking languages they never learned during moments of extreme stress, performing survival techniques from cultures their families left centuries ago, knowing things they should have no way of." "Knowing t—" Rilla thought about Hale facing the Silrath, the impossible certainty in his movements, the way he had communicated with a creature his species had never encountered. "Why do you hide this knowledge?" she asked again. "Because it frightens people, both humans and others." Moss looked at her directly. "Imagine learning that you are not just one person but thousands, that every choice you make is influenced by ancestors you never met, that your fears are not irrational but are instead warnings passed down through blood and bone for thousands of years. It changes how you see yourself, how you see reality." "Is that why humans struggle with mental illness more than any other galactic species?" Moss nodded slowly. "We are at war with ourselves. Our civilized minds want peace and stability and routine. But our ancient genes remember that peace never lasts. They keep us alert for threats that our conscious minds tell us are not real. They scream at us to fight or flee when we are sitting in perfectly safe environments. The conflict between what we know and what we remember is tearing us apart." Hale stirred, his eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. "Where am I?" he murmured. "Medical Bay," Rilla said. "You collapsed after the incident with the Silrath. You have been unconscious for 3 days." Hale sat up slowly, rubbing his face. "I dreamed about them." "About what?" "My ancestors. I saw them, felt them. Thousands of lifetimes of struggle and survival and love and loss. I saw humans hunting on open plains. I saw them huddled in caves while predators circled outside. I saw them crossing frozen wastelands and burning deserts. I saw everything they went through to make me." His voice broke slightly. "How do you carry all that?" Moss asked gently. Hale looked at her and his eyes were wet. "I do not know, but I understand now why we cannot let it go. It is not just survival code. It is their legacy. Every ancestor who fought and bled and died so their children could live. If we forget them, if we shed those genes like other species do, then their sacrifices meant nothing, Moss finished. We carry them because they carried us, all of them, 10,000 generations of survivors living in our blood, keeping us ready for the next challenge. Hale wiped his eyes. The weight is heavy, but I would not put it down for anything. An alarm shattered the moment. Tessik's console lit up with urgent warnings. We have a problem, the Silrath. It was pregnant. It gave birth in the containment cell. How many offspring? Rilla asked. 6, and they are already mobile. The containment cell was not designed for juvenile Silrath. They are smaller than the adult, small enough to... He did not need to finish. Small enough to escape. Hale stood and the transformation began again. The exhausted man was gone. In his place stood something older, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Where are they? He asked. And his voice was the voice of 10,000 generations, ready to hunt once more. 6 juvenile Silrath loose on a space station should have meant death for everyone aboard. The creatures were smaller than their mother, but no less deadly. They were hungry, frightened, and following instincts honed over millions of years of evolution on a death world. The station's non-human crew had no defense against them. But the station was not crewed only by aliens. Hale moved through the corridors, and this time he was not alone. 7 other humans worked aboard the research station, scientists and technicians and engineers from various departments. They had come when the alarm sounded, drawn by something they could not name, something in their blood that answered the call of danger. Rilla watched them gather in the central hub, and she saw the same transformation in all of them. The shift in posture, the change in breathing, the ancient light behind their eyes. They are not speaking, Tessik observed. He was monitoring from a secure room, watching through cameras. They are just looking at each other. But Rilla understood. They did not need to speak. Their ancestors had hunted in groups long before language existed. They communicated through posture and gesture and eye contact, reading each other's intentions without a single word. Hale made a small motion with his hand. The group split into pairs and moved out in different directions. Remarkable, Dr. Moss said beside her. I have studied this for 30 years, but I have never seen it in action. The pack bond, humans working together the way their ancestors did. How do they know what to do? They do not know, they remember. Every successful hunt their ancestors ever completed is written in their genes. They are drawing on millions of years of cooperative survival. Rilla followed Hale's pair through the corridors, her scanner recording everything. His partner was a young woman from the engineering department, small and seemingly fragile. But she moved with the same fluid grace as Hale, her eyes tracking shadows, her body ready for anything. They did not speak, they did not need to. In a storage room they found the first juvenile. It was the size of a large dog crouched behind a stack of containers. When it saw them, it hissed and prepared to attack. The 2 humans did not run. They spread out, flanking the creature, cutting off its escape routes. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, as if they had practiced this exact scenario 1,000 times. In a way, they had. Their ancestors had run this hunt in countless variations, and the lessons had survived. Hale made that rumbling sound again, the warning of a predator establishing dominance. The juvenile hesitated. The woman matched his sound, lower and softer, but no less threatening. Surrounded by creatures that should have been prey but acted like predators, the juvenile's instincts could not decide what to do. It froze. Hale moved forward slowly, and the creature did not attack. It retreated, step by step, until it was backed into a corner. The woman produced a net designed for specimen capture and tossed it over the juvenile before it could react. 1 down, 5 to go. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out. The human pairs tracked the juveniles using methods that should not have worked. They read air currents and listened to vibrations and followed signs invisible to alien eyes. They cornered each creature and subdued it without violence, using dominance and intimidation rather than force. Rilla watched it all with growing wonder. These humans, these soft, small, physically unremarkable beings, were hunting apex predators as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Because for them it was. The last juvenile was the largest, nearly full-grown. It had found its way to the station's populated section and was cornered in a corridor outside the residential quarters, where dozens of terrified Palori and Morevi had sheltered. Hale arrived to find the creature blocking the only exit. Behind it, his people were trapped. Ahead of it, he stood alone. "Dr. Hale," Rilla called through the comm. "Wait for backup. The others are coming." "No time." His voice was calm, too calm. "If it gets through that door, people die. You cannot face it alone. It is too big." "I am not alone." He stepped forward and the juvenile turned to face him. Its teeth were bared, its body coiled to strike. Every instinct it possessed was screaming at it to attack this small, weak, soft-skinned prey. But it hesitated, because behind Hale's eyes, it saw something that was not prey at all. It saw 10,000 generations of hunters. It saw survivors who had faced bigger threats and won. It saw the accumulated will of every ancestor who had refused to die, who had fought and bled and conquered everything their world had thrown at them. It saw a predator. Hale took another step forward, then another. He made no threatening sounds this time. He did not need to. His presence was threat enough. The juvenile retreated. Step by step, it backed away from this impossible creature that looked like food but felt like death. When it reached an open access panel, it fled into the maintenance tunnels, straight toward where the other human pairs were waiting with nets. The hunt was over. 3 hours later, Rilla sat in her laboratory, composing her final report to the Galactic Institute. She had spent her entire career studying species across the galaxy, mapping their evolution and cataloging their abilities. But nothing had prepared her for humans. "What will you tell them?" Hale asked. He sat across from her, exhausted but at peace. The ancient presence had retreated again, leaving behind the mild-mannered scientist she had first met. "The truth, that humans are unique among all species we have studied. That your genetic memory is not a flaw but a feature. That you carry your entire evolutionary history in your blood, ready to be called upon at any moment." That does not sound like something the galaxy will want to hear. Perhaps not, but they need to hear it. Rilla looked at him directly. Other species shed their past to embrace the future. They evolve by forgetting what they no longer need. But you hold on to everything, every lesson, every trauma, every victory. You refuse to let go. Is that a weakness? I thought so at first. Now I believe it may be your greatest strength. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, full of threats we have not yet discovered. When those threats emerge, other species will struggle to adapt. They will have to learn from scratch, losing lives while they figure out how to survive. But humans will remember. Yes, you will reach into your blood and pull out solutions from ancestors who faced similar challenges. You will adapt in hours what would take other species generations. Tessic entered the room. "Dr. San, the Silrath have been secured for transport back to their homeworld. All of them survived, including the mother and juveniles." Rilla nodded, then looked at Hale curiously. "You could have killed them. It would have been easier. Why did you choose to capture them instead?" Hale smiled, and something very old passed behind his eyes. "Because we remember that too. Once my ancestors hunted wolves. They could have wiped them out, made their world safer. Instead, they made friends with them. They turned predators into partners. Dogs became our greatest allies." He gestured toward the containment area. "The Silrath are dangerous now, but who knows what they might become if we give them the chance." Rilla sat back, looking at this impossible being with new eyes. Not just a predator, not just a survivor, something more complex. Something that remembered every role it had ever played and could choose which one to become. "Dr. Hale," she said slowly, "I believe I finally understand." "Understand what?" "Why you remember the hunt." She saved her report and sent it to the Institute. You remember because you are not just hunters, you are everything. Predator and prey, destroyer and protector, killer and friend. You carry the full spectrum of your evolutionary history, and you can become whatever the moment requires. Hale nodded. That is what it means to be human. We are what we were, we are what we are, and we become what we need to be. He stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of species lived their lives, shedding their pasts, evolving toward futures they could not predict. But humans remembered. They always would. And that, Rilla wrote in her concluding notes, was perhaps why they would outlast them all.